I'm Melanie Parker, Google's Chief Diversity Officer. At Google, equity is a part of everything we do, from how we build products to how we build our workforce. We understand that creating meaningful change requires a commitment to continued learning. The Equity Talk series, part of our Equity Learner Journey, is on a mission to examine and understand social injustice through honest conversations with some of the world's most exceptional people. We hope you find the interview you're about to watch informative, inspiring, and thought-provoking. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maria Running Fisher Jones. I'm a lawyer, a Googler, a mother, and a member of the Blackfeet Nation. I've been leading a working group at Google to raise awareness and funds for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, a movement also known as MMIW. Today, in honor of Native American Heritage Month and to shine light on MMIW, I'm joined in conversation with three women, each of whom have a connection to the MMIW movement. Cheryl Marriott is a champion for LGBTQ+, BIPOC, and mental health initiatives. She is a member of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation and a lead for Google's Aboriginal and Indigenous network, also known as GAIN. She's the head of the MMIW working group at Google, leading a group of volunteers to raise awareness within and outside of Google for MMIW. Gloria Steinem, who needs no introduction, is a writer, lecturer, political activist, and feminist organizer. She is particularly interested in the shared origins of sex and race caste systems, gender roles, nonviolent conflict resolution, and cultures of Indigenous people, and organizing across boundaries for peace and justice. She is currently working on a Center for Organizers in tribute to Wilma Mankiller, Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation. And Kimberly Loring HeavyRunner, who has been searching for her sister, Ashley Loring HeavyRunner, since she disappeared in 2017. In her tireless efforts and her heartbreaking journey has become one of just thousands of MMIW stories. Kimberly has spoken at Senate hearings and to multiple news outlets to raise awareness for MMIW and to find her sister. Ladies, thank you and welcome. Kimberly, let's start with you telling us more about your sister, Ashley.
My name is Kimberly Loring HeavyRunner, and my sister is Ashley Loring HeavyRunner. In 2017, on June 6th, was the last text message that I received from my sister. She was asking me when I was going to be home from my trip in Morocco. She was ready for me to be home and ready to start her new life on moving with me. So she was very passionate about letting things go and starting new. And that was our plans in 2017. And my sister, when she went missing, she was 20 years old. She's full of life, just lovely. She was just laughing all the time, and she's just full of life. And my sister, sorry, it's really hard to talk about my sister, even though it's been 4 years. The pain and the memory of my sister is very strong, because that's all we have to hold on to right now is the pain and the memory of what we have from her.
Kimberly, I just want to take a moment and say, please take all the time that you need to share your story. It is your relationship with Ashley that is so powerful and that brings a face to this movement. So please.
Thank you. I picked this photo of my sister because it's a beautiful photograph of Ashley, and it shows how looking for her brought so much light to this movement, and it was a beautiful example of how these cases like Ashley's are easily overlooked and easily and is easily mishandled. And this photograph is a perfect example of these cases.
So your central involvement with this MMIW movement, I know it began kind of even before Ashley went missing, but now in the forefront of with the disappearance of your sister. I know that there's a saying that goes around in the Indigenous community. When an Indigenous woman goes missing, she goes missing twice. First her body vanishes, and then her story. So I know this needs no gratitude, but from me, but thank you for all the work that you're doing to kind of make sure that these women never go missing the second time, particularly Ashley, by keeping their stories alive. I know in the past you said, you mentioned just now about how things were mishandled. So you've described the search for Ashley as a largely solitary process that eventually received aid from community members and a tribal reporter that brought Ashley's story to light. How has the search for Ashley evolved since 2017, since she first went missing?
So when Ashley first went missing, it was on June 29th, the law enforcement had a search in the Rocky Mountains. And on the 1st, it was a Friday. So they were told that Ashley was running from a vehicle just alongside the mountain front. And so the law enforcement went there to search. And that's when that's when I finally got out. I'm sorry, this is my I took a huge...
Take your time. I can't imagine anything more difficult,
This is the time when we knew that it was going to be all up to us to keep looking for Ashley, because on the second day of searching, I asked the officers, are we going to meet here in the morning? And he said, there's nobody going to be here because nobody's going to be on the payroll. And that's when I knew that they weren't going to look for Ashley and that we were going to have to depend on our own family to keep searching, and as well as letting everybody know on social media so we can get help, because we don't have a payroll to pay the police. And when we went there the very next day, there was a volunteer there that went there before he had to go to work. And that's when I knew that we were going to search on our own. And that's when we started searching in 2017. And since then, only time that we really got more law enforcement involved is when we went to speak at the Senate to describe how we were treated by the law enforcement and how our own law enforcement officers were actively involved with the suspects and giving information to them. That's the biggest reason why we went to the Senate. Because we were told that Ashley's body was being moved. And each time we would search and find these places, we would find a hole that was empty. Either we were there and it was, she was there, and then they moved her. And the only time that we really got help is when we brought it to the media and when we brought it to light, to shed light and to show what's going on. And since then, from 2017 to 2020, there was only 6 searches done from the law enforcement. But since for this past year, they were able to search the lake in St. Mary's. But now we are with the FBI. The way that we're going to get more help is if we actually find Ashley, or if a suspect is going to basically tell us where she's at in her location. That's where we're at. So it's all in our hands, just like it has been these past 4 years.
So Gloria, you are an icon and a driving force behind many movements, and now you've turned your attention towards the MMIW movement. Can you tell us a little bit more about your connections to MMIW and offer some wisdom for how we move forward?
I owe my awareness at all of this to Wilma Mankiller, who was the chief of the Cherokee Nation, who was a dear friend and a colleague, and who was my belated initiation into how prevalent missing and murdered Indigenous women are. Then also, Amy Richards and I did a documentary about this terrible reality in Canada. And altogether, it's become, I mean, once you're aware of it, you can't ever not be aware of it. And also, it's impossible not to mourn and be angry at the lack of law enforcement attention to this problem. It's as if there are multiple invisibilities: Native people, female human beings, lack of law enforcement in Indian country and around Indian country. It is something that I hope this program, I'm so grateful for this program, will educate people on and make them angry enough to act and care.
So you said something earlier about how once it's something that you become aware of, it's impossible to kind of not think about or act on. What are some things that we can do, again, as just listeners, as people that are maybe, I've been working on this for a while. I know Kimberly and Maria have been engaged with this for a very long time. But for people who are maybe just learning about it, what are some of the things that we can do to kind of bring this issue to the kind of forefront of the social consciousness?
Well, I think just the concept of vertical history helps. We tend to study history as if it were horizontal and only affecting European and perhaps some women and men of color, but we don't think about the vertical history of the reality of the land on which we stand. I mean, I live in New York City. I go out in Central Park and put my hand on the Indigenous rock there and think about the reality of the Mannahatta people who were here in the first instance and are no longer, but in many, many parts of this country and this North American continent, there are valuable, widespread, sophisticated, deep cultures from which we could all learn so much. And yet they are being wiped out of our educational system and often wiped out physically as well.
Yes, I know that there's been a tremendous movement lately on land acknowledgements and kind of recognizing the land that you're in. It's very interesting because there is this whole concept of the Indigenous person as in the past tense. The people that were here, or the people that helped the settlers settle, particularly relevant in November in the U.S., which U.S. Thanksgiving is coming up. Whereas this presence of like, I am still Native American and I am still here. So I know that is definitely a pressing idea.
Mm.
So
yes, I'm so glad you say that, because I think that in addition, what comes after invisibility that's total is invisibility produced by only an emphasis on the past, not on the present. And that is crucial, and it's something that we individually can remedy. It's something our schools should remedy, and very few are. And it is not about guilt or punishment. It's about a gift. I mean, there's so much to learn. After all, democracy was invented by, practiced by the tribes and nations that were here. Europeans who arrived learned democracy from those tribes and nations. And that's just one indication of what there is to be gained.
Absolutely. I want to bring attention back quickly to your Emmy-nominated series Woman, particularly the third episode. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of reactions that you've had to that particular episode, and how kind of filming that may have kind of opened up your perspectives and maybe the perspectives of others?
I think there's no substitute for seeing images of real people on screen and understanding this is taking place in the present. It actually was filmed more in the Canadian part of this continent than in the US part, but that doesn't matter because the reality is the same. We got media notice, but I'm frustrated by the lack of change that actually came from exposing the reality as best we could.
I do think that, echoing back the first part of your statement, I think that's why it's so significant that we have Kimberly with us here today, because Kimberly's story with her sister Ashley, and even Ashley's engagement with the MMIW movement before she even went missing, and now Kimberly's kind of picking up that mantle and driving that. There is no substitute for seeing the humanity of the face of somebody who has gone missing and a relative that is ongoing searching for her, particularly in the Indigenous communities where we are all relatives. So it is, when one of us goes missing, it's all of us. It's a community.
Yes, I love the phrase "and all our relations" that comes at the end of ceremony.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, Kimberly, for some other segments of the population, media shows up at your doorstep. They ask about a missing woman or a missing child. For you, this sounds like a very different experience where you had to actively seek media attention. Can you speak a little bit about that, what that process was like for you?
Yes. So when Ashley went missing, we had this impression that the law enforcement would send out a report that she's missing. But for a few weeks, Ashley was only reported as a attempt to contact, even though the law enforcement received several tips that she was hurt, that she was murdered, and that she was seen running from a vehicle. And that's when we were able to speak with the reporter that is actually from our tribe that was working at a local news station. And she was able to go to the police station and find out why is, and she was able to find out why Ashley was only reported as attempted contact. After several weeks, she was reported missing from the family. And it was from the reporter that we found out that she was only an attempt to locate. And when she was put on NamUs, the phone number to contact for tips was actually put as a casino and not the police station. Yeah. And there was, in 2017, there was just no help, and it was literally, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to. But I do know that if you're truthful and you tell the truth, then the truth goes very far. And so I just put up on a post, we need help. If you know anybody that has media, who knows media, who is actively working in the media, my sister's missing and I really need help and my family needs help, like finding her. And that post reached 166,000 people. And a lot of people shared it with these groups. And we then were in contact with our first contact with Maria, with the media was the local stations at first. And then it went to Marie Claire, was one of our first interviews. Then we worked with ABC News that worked with us for a year and dove into Ashley's case and was able to talk with the suspects. And then they were able to speak with other people that would like to do the same. And the biggest reason why we wanted to keep working with the documentary teams is because they have drones. And at that time, we didn't have any help from the law enforcement for searching. We didn't have anything to help, because at that time, I left and just quit my job and went home to Browning. And but but these documentary teams have the best drones, and they were able to do Ashley's story, but also help search.
So Gloria, speaking of media here, Gloria, you've recently done a documentary on the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls movement in Canada. How common is Kimberly's story about her sister Ashley? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
You know, there are no clear known statistics because of the lack of care and attention by law enforcement. So it is mainly families reporting missing girls and women, both in Canada and in the US. When we were doing the documentary, Amy Richards and I, we also uncovered, not surprisingly, a relationship to so-called man camps, that is, camps of the extractive industries that are in very remote areas and that attract or import women, frequently Native women, for sexual purposes. And, you know, that became one of the many magnets or causes. But, you know, I personally, and everybody I know who's ever reported on this, has never, ever, ever been able to get over or stop being obsessed with the invisibility of this issue. I mean, women in general are more subject to sexual assault and disappearance than are men in general. Women of color are more subject than white women. And it seems that Native women in both the US and Canada are the most subject and the least likely to be attended to. So I'm grateful for this program. I hope that everybody who is watching it will do whatever they can to attend to this issue where they live. And will also think secondarily, I mean, first, that's the most important, to find and aid and women who are with us, but also we'll begin to think about vertical history. Who was here before us, and where is that group now? I mean, we, in my experience, don't learn this in school. I live in Manhattan. I go out in Central Park, Manhattan, which was Mannahatta, and put my hand on the indigenous rocks there and think, whose hand was here before? You know, just the awareness of the centuries and centuries of vertical history that we don't know will help, I think, to make us angry about the present that is being buried.
Agreed. I think that there's a tremendous amount of visibility that we're that's the name of one of the documentaries, is Not Invisible, around the MMIW movement. Both of you have brought up issues with law enforcement. Kimberly, I want to bring back one time you used an example of a deer that was poached on the reservation and stated that the investigation into the poaching was more in-depth than the investigation into murdered and missing Indigenous women's cases. For those who are kind of new to hearing about this MMIW movement, I open it up to both of you. Can you talk a little bit about what are these issues that we're facing with kind of getting an investigation in these cases? Like what are the confounding factors preventing kind of the issues with law enforcement? Because it does seem like there's a discrepancy with, for example, missing white women syndrome and how Indigenous cases are investigated and reported on.
Of course. So the biggest problem that we face, and that I found out that so many families face as well, is when we first go and report our family members missing, we fall into the stereotype that, oh, she's just out. Okay. Oh, sorry. That we fall into the stereotype that they're just out partying, or they're like, oh, they just ran away. They're known for running, or they're known for going out and doing drugs and drinking. But that is the most crucial time when somebody goes missing, is when the family first reports it. And within those first 2 days is the most crucial time. But the law enforcement is stating that they're out partying and they're not taking it seriously. And that's how we are able to keep searching for years and years, because the first few moments when they went missing were not taken seriously. Like when back in 1979, I believe, it was Monica Still Smokin' went missing, and she was 7 years old on the Blackfeet Reservation in Browning. And she was even told that, her family was told that she went missing, but she's probably just at a friend's house. She just ran away to a friend's house. She was only 7 years old, and it was a big storm in the town of Browning. And back then, when it storms, it's huge. It's a bad storm. But even 40 years ago, we were still put in this stereotype that they just ran off, and that wasn't taken seriously. And Monica Still Smokin' was later found frozen to the mountain. It was very sad. And there's so many other families that we spoke to that are being told the same thing, that they're just out partying.
And as the oldest person here, I should say perhaps that this is a multiplication and a deepening of a problem that women of all races, more women of color than white women probably, but the female half of the population is not regarded as fully human in some way. When I was growing up in Toledo, Ohio, if there was domestic violence, the goal of the police, no matter how severe the violence against the woman, was to get the couple back together again. I mean, this is where we started in terms of disregard for female human beings. And we were at that point ourselves not understanding who else, the women who were there in Ohio and Michigan and the surrounding area. So, the problem is patriarchy, the problem is racism, the problem is no understanding and study of the extremely valuable, sophisticated, important cultures that were here before Europeans showed up and that continue to be here. So I say that just because there is such a reward for going down this path. It is so restoring, not just of history, but of humanity.
Kimberly, we're from the same tribe, the same reservation. So I've heard your sister's story for a long time, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her. I think I told you on the phone the other day, without trying to get emotional, that it haunts me. I think about it every single day. But for those of us that aren't intimately involved, what do you think we can do to keep Ashley and other missing women in the collective consciousness, let people know that this is a pandemic in its own right?
The biggest thing is to keep telling their story, and to keep talking about them and keep sharing their story and what happened to them, and to always remember who they were before they went missing. And that's what I'd like to share with everybody, is that if you see a story about somebody missing, share their story, because the pain that the family have and not having any answers and not knowing what happened to their loved one is extreme anxiety. And this goes on for years. And if somebody just keeps telling their story, then one day we can bring them home.
That is, I thank you so much for saying that, because there's not enough understanding of the power of stories. Our minds, our brains are organized on narrative. And tell me a fact and I'll forget. Tell me a story and I'll never forget, right? It's so important to tell her story.
Exactly. And when you listen to these family stories of their loved ones, you think, like, this is so unique. Like, this never happens. Like, this is like a sad, very sad, terrible story of what happened to this person. But these stories are not unique. These stories are the very same as so many of these people throughout Indian land. No, they're not unique. And when you tell one story of someone going missing and not getting any justice and still searching, you're telling everybody's story. So when we keep one person in light and keep talking about them, then we will finally, okay, and we will finally notice that this is happening everywhere around us. And when you tell one story, you're telling everybody's story, because it's the very same.
Speaking of stories, would you mind sharing a story of just one of your happiest memories with your sister?
Yes. One of the most happiest memory of Ashley. We went to the zoo one day because she was going to school in Chemawa in Oregon, and she wanted me to meet her at the zoo in Portland. And we were going through, just seeing the animals, so excited, taking pictures, and we were laughing. And there was this hippo. She was so excited to see the hippo, so excited, and she was posing by this hippo, and this hippo was facing us. But by the time that we took the picture, the hippo turned, and on the camera, it just showed the back of the hippo, and then it just showed Ashley just with this big cheesy smile, and she was laughing so hard. She was like, wow, I'm just so cheesy, and this hippo just turned, and all you see is just the back of the hippo. And we just laughed so hard because she's just sitting there like, yeah, I'm really cheesy. And like, yeah, it's a hippo, but the hippo turned around. And so she's just like looking at this hippo butt right beside us. It was the most funniest time. We were just laughing the whole time. And we just felt we were at that time, Ashley was 15 and I was 18. And we were just going around the zoo like little kids, just having fun, taking pictures, jumping on the statues of the lions. And that's the most photos that we have together, is the photos at the zoo. And but there's just so many memories of my sister and I, wherever we needed to do. And okay, so Ashley is my little sister. And so growing up, we were always together. And I needed to be brave, or when I needed to do something, and I needed somebody to be there for me, Ashley would always just jump up and be like, okay, let's do it. Even if it was uncomfortable, even if it was hard work, even if it was going to feed the horses and it's only 10 degrees outside, she'd jump right up and be like, let's do it. Let's go. And this is what really gave me the biggest drive to keep searching for my sister and to keep looking for Ashley and keep talking to media, even though how uncomfortable it can be with having to stutter. It was a drive that knowing that no matter what, Ashley would stand up, and I would do anything for my sister, even if it takes telling the whole world that Ashley is missing. And that's the bond that we have together. And that's why I keep looking for my sisters, because of the love that we have.
Mhm.
It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
I think we all feel so grateful to you for putting yourself in the painful position of telling and retelling her story because of her, because of other missing women, uh, because this is the way we learn through stories. This is bringing us together. I thank you so much for surviving the difficulty of telling this story.
Thank you. Leave it all the glory to God. He is so amazing.
Absolutely. I want to kind of piggyback. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for sharing what I think is often missing a lot in this MMIW and the work that goes into MMIW. I know personally I have to take the privilege of taking time for myself when I've been enmeshed too deeply in MMIW work because of how hard and emotionally exhausting it can be. And I know that you don't have the luxury of kind of taking time off. But it can be really hard and it can be really daunting, particularly for people who are new and getting involved with this. And I'm sure that for some of our audience, it is gut wrenching. And Gloria, you've mentioned this before, how hard it is once you you can't unhear the stories and you can't unsee the things that you've seen once you've been involved in this work. So Gloria, kind of taking lessons from all of the movements that you've been active in over the past, you've made tremendous strides for a tremendous amount of movements and ideas. What can we take from those lessons to kind of drive MMIW forward and make sure that we don't have any more stolen sisters?
Well, I'm not the one to say because we each proceed in a different way. But I think it's an awareness, a daily awareness that causes us to see the world in a different way. We leave our houses in the morning and we are concerned with whatever our daily duties are and what we haven't, whatever our concerns are. And it kind of blinds us to the spontaneous reality around us. I remember leaving my door one morning and in that mood and walking to the corner and standing on the curb. And there was an older man, even older than me, delivering packages, perhaps delivering food, I don't know what. And I thought, well, we're standing on the curb together. I'll just say hello. Right? I still know that man. He occasionally rings my doorbell. We have a talk about politics. Just making a human connection whenever we can, wherever we are, and extending that connection to the people we can't see, the people who are missing, the people who don't look like us, the people who don't have the same experience, whatever it is. It's a huge reward of consciousness and community. There's no greater reward. And that's what social justice movements are about too. They're kind of an enlargement, a big enlargement of family. It's definitely not a sacrifice. It is a reward. And I hope that the people who are listening might take whatever they find useful from this, and also be aware of the number of women, especially, who are missing.
Kimberly, I know that you've been very focused on Ashley, but I know that you're also very focused on other missing people, particularly Blackfeet. Is there anything you want to say about your efforts in searching not only for your sister, but for other people impacted in our community?
particularly with Gloria's comments on sharing all of these stories and keeping this in the kind of collective consciousness. Please, Kimberly.
Yes, in April of 2021, we have a 3-year-old that went missing on the Blackfeet Reservation. Her name is Arden Peppian. And then a few days later, we have a 26-year-old man named Leo Wagner that went missing. They went missing within a few days from each other. And what they were going through and what the family was going through, it was like looking in a mirror at ourselves. It was very haunting, and we were able to go out and help with the Leo Wagner's family, and to go search for them, because at the same area that Leo went missing was around the same area that Ashley was last seen. And the people that were involved with Ashley's case was also, some of them are involved in Leo's case. And so we were able to work together with the family and use from our experience and from what's going on in the case to what's going on within ourselves when we go through such a tragic event, and how we need to write everything down when these things happen. When your loved one goes missing, you get a lot of different stories of what happened to them. So we were able to help them with reminding them to write everything down. We need a paper trail. We need to write the timeline and from the very beginning. And these families are still searching. They have not yet were able to find their loved ones. And now we have 3 of our loved ones that are not yet found on the Blackfeet Reservation. And we try to help their families in any way that we can, because the first snowstorm was just yesterday. And when it snows, it just brings this heavy feeling of how we're going to search now when we can't even see the ground. And I remember searching in 3 feet of snow, and that was just the love that we and the faith that we have in God that we might be able to find them. And this is our reality on the Blackfeet Reservation, is who will be the next that goes missing. And that's really sad, because now we have 3.
Thank you all so much for your time today. I started and have been leading the MMIW work at Google the past year. And in that time, we've raised over $30,000 for MMIW organizations and held multiple events to raise awareness within the Google community. It was because of Kimberly and Ashley's story that I was moved to action on this issue. I am humbled and honored to have talked to both you, Kimberly, and you, Gloria, both passionate advocates for the cause for MMIW. As you were just talking about, Ashley's story is all too common with Native and Indigenous people. And I hope for the people that are listening, this conversation and hearing the stories of our Native and Indigenous relatives inspires all of you as well. You've heard so far a little bit from Kimberly and Gloria on actions you can take to raise awareness and stop the epidemic of MMIW. But also, please consider doing any of the following. Donating to many of the organizations across the US and Canada that are raising money for this cause. For example, organizations like MMIW USA use the money that you donate to provide food and gas money to volunteers who spend hours walking hundreds of miles, like Kimberly did, to bring our relatives home. Also, educate yourself on the MMIW movement and what is being done policy-wise to address disparities in jurisdiction, resources, and data accuracy. In the US, this includes familiarization with Savannah's Act, the Non-Invisible Commission, and Operation Lady Justice. Also, you can familiarize yourself with the Sovereign Bodies Institute MMIWG Missing Persons Database. Ashley is just one of, right now, 129 Indigenous people that are listed on the National Missing Persons Database. The Sovereign Bodies Institute has a more comprehensive list of Indigenous people that have gone missing. These missing relatives are not just faces on missing posters, but they're family, and we are all connected. So I do want to say thank you to our guests, Kimberly Loring HeavyRunner and Gloria Steinem, as well as my co-moderator, Maria Running Fisher-Jones. We are thankful for your time and attention as we work to bring our relatives home. With that, I'd like to kind of open it up to you all to have the final word. Kimberly and Gloria, do you have any kind of last comments that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Kimberly, I think I cede these comments to you.
I think my last comments I would say is to the families to never give up and to take care of yourself, because that's the only way that we're going to find them. If we actively take care of ourselves and become stronger, and that's how we're going to bring our sisters home and our loved ones home, is if we actively take care of ourselves, become stronger to keep fighting for them.
Thank you so much, Kimberly and Gloria.
Learn about Google's Equity Learner Journey on diversity.google.com and sign up to learn about new episodes.